I found myself transmigrated into the body of a tragic novel's female lead. The one who the wealthy male protagonist called a sycophant only worthy of being paid off. In front of everyone, I overturned the table. You said you had no male pride and hired me to act as your sycophant. Now, you think we're familiar enough for you to slack off? Do you realize how long it's been since you paid me? The male protagonist, Galileo Faulkner, was stunned by my words. Don't spout nonsense. The next day, the school forum was abuzz. Rich kid Galileo Faulkner's persona shattered, transforms into a deadbeat debtor. Story begins. My mission was clear, to turn the tables and seek revenge for this tormented heroine. Galileo Faulkner, half drunk, called me to pick him up. I ventured out in the pouring rain. At the dinner table, others applauded and cheered. Faulkner, you sure have your wife well trained. Such heavy rain, and she still came when called. Sit down and rest, sister-in-law. Galileo Faulkner looked at me disdainfully and said, What sister-in-law? She's just a sycophant. I called and she really came. The goddess beside him, Mireille Bannister, smiled gently. All right, stop bullying her. Let her go back. What if she catches a cold in this weather? Oh, treating me like a dog, are we? Galileo Faulkner sneered. Who cares? She's only here for the money. Pay her and she's off. Mireille Bannister, twirling her hair, rested her delicate hand on her chin and batted her eyes. It's not her fault. In our family, my mother controls the finances. My uncle, who doesn't earn much, is responsible for my sister's expenses. In the original story, the heroine and the goddess were stepsisters. The heroine's father was a handsome good-for-nothing, while the goddess's mother was a dominant businesswoman. The heroine was at the bottom of the food chain. No wonder she needed my help for revenge. Galileo Faulkner took out a wad of cash from his wallet, pointed at a bottle of red wine in front of him, and said, Drink this bottle, and this money is yours. How about it? I took a step back, looking at him in shock. Faulkner, are you drunk? What can I do with this small amount of money? Galileo Faulkner's brow furrowed. What did you say? He looked me up and down, probably thinking it was another trick to get his attention. I shook off the rain and pulled up a chair to sit opposite him. We had an agreement. You wanted to prove your charm by hiring me as a sycophant. Our relationship is purely contractual, but you haven't paid me for months. Just today, I came out in the rain to support you. Overtime pay should be $10,000 at least, right? Drinking is bad for health, so an extra $5,000 for compensation. Mireille Bannister is here too. Her words are like sewage, and I endured her insults. Emotional damages. $8,800. Fair enough, right? And what do I get? I took the money he was offering and started counting it rapidly. My fingers a blur. Less than $20,000. Are you treating me like a beggar? Remember when you begged me to help you boost your ego? You said you were insecure and needed a sycophant to regain confidence. I felt sorry for you and agreed. How can you act like this? The room fell silent. A pin could drop. A female voice trembled in my mind. How can you say that about him? How will he ever face anyone again? I replied, if I don't say it, he'll continue treating me like a dog. Florence Tavish, do you enjoy being treated like a dog? Yes, the original heroine's consciousness was still there, but she couldn't control this body and could only watch in frustration. Galileo Faulkner, trembling, pointed at me. Are you crazy? What nonsense are you spouting? You threw yourself at me. I laughed and told Florence Tavish. Did you hear that? He called you despicable. Florence Tavish's voice was weak. He's just angry because of you. Oh, but before. He called you despicable many times without being provoked. Florence Tavish stubbornly replied, eventually, he'll realize who truly cares for him. We've known each other since childhood. No one treats him better than I do. How about a bet? Within a week, I'll make him come back to you. Deal. Florence Tavish, just don't provoke him anymore. His ego is very fragile. When you go back, make him a sobering soup, and treat him well. Endure whatever he says, and... Ignoring her nagging, I stared at Galileo Faulkner. Faulkner, it seems you want to renege on our deal. Fine, business is off, but I have something to say. Addressing the silent spectators, I said, be careful around him. This guy's a scumbag who doesn't pay his debts. Galileo Faulkner, I pointed a finger at his forehead, emphasizing each word, doesn't pay debts. Under everyone's disdainful gazes, Galileo Faulkner broke down. I turned to leave. He jumped up, grabbing me in a panic. Come back here. I met his anger head-on. What? Getting violent out of shame? You told me you lacked male charm, and I reassured you not to feel so insecure. Now, I see you were honest. Let go, you loser. Galileo Faulkner, visibly shaken, stammered. I didn't. You're talking nonsense. Mireille Bannister stood, frowning at me. What are you saying? You've been pestering Galileo for years. Can't you see he hates you? I retorted. He was just pretending to impress you. He's always felt inferior around you. You know why he torments me? Because he says I resemble you. It's his way of role-playing, hurting me to hurt you. He's twisted like that. Be careful. Galileo Faulkner's face turned crimson as he smashed a bottle in anger. Get out. I stormed out. I didn't return to the dorm but went to Galileo Faulkner's home. He had given me a key so I could act as his housekeeper. I took a comfortable hot shower, used his expensive skincare products, pampered myself, and relaxed on the couch. Florence Tavish was frantic. He hates it when others touch his things. Fix everything before he notices. I lazily waved a finger. He only hates it when you touch his things. If Mireille Bannister did it, he'd be thrilled. You bought all these products for him, so why can't I use them? Florence Tavish couldn't argue and muttered softly, when he comes back, don't confront him. Just soothe his anger. Not long after, Galileo Faulkner returned. Seeing me, he was furious, smashing a vase and pointing at me. You lunatic. Get up and explain everything to Mireille. How much? He was stunned. I repeated patiently, how much are you willing to pay for my help? Galileo Faulkner's face twisted in anger. You dare ask for money. I clapped my hands. Hey, I value myself highly. Do you know what self-worth means? It means I deserve the best. I'm valuable. If you want my help for free, keep dreaming. Galileo Faulkner scrutinized me, finally realizing something. Florence Tavish, no matter how you act, I won't be interested in you. Stop these antics. Florence Tavish was panicking too. Stop before he misunderstands. I snapped my fingers, producing a card from thin air. This is a trick. I was discussing business. How much will you pay me to continue being your sycophant? Galileo Faulkner's face darkened, but the heroine sycophant image was too ingrained. He repeated, no matter what, I'll only hate you more. My time is precious. One word. Yes or no. I don't have time to waste. Galileo Faulkner lost his temper. Then get out. You'll come crawling back, crying. I left gracefully. The next day, Galileo Faulkner came crying to me. Delete what you wrote on the confession wall. Now. Beg me. I never expected Galileo Faulkner to cry. He tried to hold back tears, but they flowed freely, which made him look surprisingly endearing. Men appear less greasy when vulnerable, so I felt less inclined to slap him today. Stop crying. Speak plainly. Galileo Faulkner slammed the table. Delete those posts now. And how do you know I wrote them? Who else would write, a rich kid named F hired a classmate as a sycophant and didn't pay her? Galileo Faulkner shoved his phone in my face. Who else would do this? I sipped my coffee, checked the confession wall comments, and laughed. Wow, people are vicious, like they're your mortal enemies. Galileo Faulkner was crumbling. Understandably, he was a love-deprived illegitimate child, whose father only gave money and no affection, and his mother was incompetent. Deep down, he was fragile and sensitive. The heroine-sycophant relationship lasted because he needed the security it provided. But that's not my problem. My sympathy and love are reserved for myself. I continued to enjoy my coffee, feeling pity for myself, sitting with this idiot. I switched to the confession wall and opened the front camera, leisurely applying lipstick. Galileo Faulkner banged the table again. How will you make it right? I'll admit you're my girlfriend if that helps. Florence Tavish was overjoyed. Agree now. I splashed my coffee on Galileo Faulkner's head. Who wants to be your girlfriend? Dream on. Florence Tavish was speechless. People around us whispered, recognizing him as the confession wall's subject, and took out their phones to record. Galileo Faulkner, in a panic, wiped his face with napkins, trembling with rage. What do you want? You pay, I work. Clear transaction. Galileo Faulkner, facing reality, gritted his teeth. How much? How much is your reputation worth? Galileo Faulkner was stunned, quickly composing himself. 850,000? I laughed, patting his shoulder. Don't pretend to be rich if you aren't. Only 10,000? You're lucky I'm educated. Otherwise, I'd cuss you out of your pants. I picked up my canvas bag like it was an Hermes and walked out with my head held high. The confession wall updated again. Sycophant actor demands payment, splashes coffee on deadbeat. It wasn't me who posted it. Who knew students loved gossip so much? When Galileo Faulkner came to me a second time, he was visibly subdued. How much do you want? I tapped the table. How much can you afford? Galileo Faulkner, frustrated. 850,000, no more. I nodded. 150,000. I'll help you explain to Mireille Bannister that I slandered you out of unrequited love. Galileo Faulkner's face contorted. Just to her. I shrugged. Isn't she your goddess? Your love is worth that. Otherwise, I'm leaving. Galileo Faulkner handed me a card. I pushed it back. No cards. Transfer the money to me, 1314520, with a note. Florence Tavish, I love you forever. This is our second anniversary gift. The rest in cash. Galileo Faulkner gritted his teeth. Fine. Honestly, I didn't think he had the brains to turn against me. But considering our relationship, I had to be cautious. Florence Tavish watched the entire scene unfold, her mouth agape in disbelief. How can you blackmail him? I replied, he can trample over you, so why can't I blackmail him? Florence protested. He treats me badly because he's immature and doesn't understand his own feelings. One day, he'll realize that I'm the one who truly suits him. I laughed. He treats you badly because he doesn't think you're worth it. It's that simple. Look, when I told him he couldn't take advantage of me, he learned he had to pay for my services. If you keep fawning over him for free, he'll never learn that lesson. Florence wanted to argue but fell silent as she looked at the balance in the account. After a while, she said, Don't spend that money recklessly. His birthday is coming up. Save it to buy him a gift. I immediately started browsing online shopping sites and emptied my cart with a single click. Florence was shocked. Why are you buying so much stuff? You like being a sycophant. That's your business. Right now, I'm in control of this body, and I'm not going to let myself suffer. I earned this money through my own skills, so don't bother me. With that, I booked a skin treatment, went shopping at the mall, and paid for an expensive hair treatment. Standing in front of the mirror, I reapplied my lipstick. Florence stammered, You look really nice. Whether I look nice or not has nothing to do with you. Before I complete my mission, I plan to spend all the money. Once I'm gone, you can go back to fawning over Galileo Faulkner and playing the role of his maid. Florence fell silent. That evening, Galileo Faulkner invited Mireille Bannister for sushi and called me halfway through their meal. I was enjoying a cozy tea session and taking beautiful photos. I took a sip of tea and said, What's the appearance fee? Galileo choked. What appearance fee? The money you gave me was for explaining things to Mireille Bannister. Do you expect me to run over to see you for free at night? Why should I leave my comfortable bed to come meet you? Don't be so thick-skinned. Galileo stammered. Don't be unreasonable. Unreasonable. I snapped. You're used to me treating you nicely, so you think you can boss me around? I live to enjoy myself. Did you drink horse piss? Who do you think you are to order me around like a maid? After a moment of silence, Galileo gritted his teeth. How about 50,000? Just come over. And then what? The dorm will be closed by the time I get back. Do you expect me to sleep on the street? 50,000 for coming, 60,000 for returning, and you cover the hotel costs. If not, I'll expose you on the confession wall. Scumbag. 2 minutes later, I received a transfer of 110,000, with Galileo noting voluntary gift, without needing my reminder. Florence was puzzled. Why did he pay so willingly? Because he's a masochist. If you speak nicely, he won't listen. But if you scold him, he'll behave. Florence pondered. So, all my heartfelt words never reached him? I let her mull it over while I took a cab to the address Galileo provided. When I arrived, Galileo and Mireille were eating sushi. Standing above Mireille, I said, "Why didn't you tell me you were having dinner?" Mireille's face twisted in disgust. "What are you doing here? You despicable person. Are you so poor that you'll do anything for money? Aren't you his hired sycophant? What does our dinner have to do with you?" I slapped Galileo on the head. "Tell her what our relationship is." Galileo, holding his head, was bewildered. "What relationship? I love you but can't have you, so I want to force you. That's our relationship," I said coldly. Galileo, still confused, nodded. Yeah, that's it." Mireille was suspicious. "Then why did you say he paid you?" "Well, that's how us domineering sycophants are. If we can't have him, we slander him. Didn't you believe it the other day? One less competitor." Mireille looked at Galileo, unable to regain her previous sense of superiority. "Galileo, I hate her. Make sure she doesn't bother you anymore." Galileo parroted. "Don't bother me anymore." I said professionally, "Dream on. Even in death I'll haunt you." Then I turned and left for a nearby 5-star hotel. Late at night, Galileo called. His voice was thick with emotion as he asked what I was doing. Florence was thrilled. Is he trying to talk to me? It's the first time he's used this tone with me. I said into the phone, "Oh, you confessed to Mireille and got rejected, so now you're wallowing in self-pity? Am I your emotional trash can? You only think of me when you're down. Do I owe you?" This time, Galileo caught on quickly. He said weakly, "I'll give you money." Florence was silent. Galileo transferred the money, noting voluntary gift. I softened my tone. "What do you want to say?" Galileo started rambling, telling me things I already knew. As an illegitimate child, he watched as his father's wife and her people came to slap his mother, leaving him with psychological scars from a young age. Later, his mother gained status, and he moved in with his father's family, but he was ostracized by the children there. Only Mireille stood up for him. I listened in silence, while Florence was in tears. After recounting his childhood traumas, Galileo sighed deeply. "Florence, I know you've been acting up because I've neglected you for so long. I've realized you've always been good to me. Maybe we can give this a try." Florence stopped crying excitedly, urging, "Say you agree." I sat up, opened a bottle of water, and cleared my throat. Then, in a clear voice, I said, "What makes you think you're worth me taking over? Do you think I'm a garbage collector?" Galileo was furious. "Florence, don't be so ungrateful." "Ungrateful? That's rich coming from you." I sneered. "Look at yourself. What's there to like? You can't even wash your own socks. You flunk at least 4 subjects each semester, and you're out of breath after 1,000 meters. You're useless in every aspect. Why would I want to take over for you? Then why did you stick around as my sycophant for so long?" "Not anymore, Galileo Faulkner. You're done." "I'm done with you." Galileo was speechless, as was Florence. After a long pause, Galileo asked, "Do you really think that of me?" Florence was desperate. "No," I mercilessly said. "Galileo Faulkner, you know deep down how worthless you are. If you were really as good as you think, why does Mireille treat you like a backup option? Why does she refuse to be with you?" Galileo, hit where it hurt, defended himself. "It's just my background. She's not like you. Her mother is very strict. Wow, we're both from the same family. She has strict upbringing, and I'm not a garbage dump." Galileo broke down. "Florence, do you think you're so great? You sucked up to me because of my money. You pretended to be virtuous, but every time you fawned over me, I wanted to slap you. If you weren't so eager, do you think I'd care about you? You're plain, boring, and clumsy. You embarrass me." I laughed heartily. "If you didn't care, why call me late at night, asking to try things out? Trying to guilt me into taking over? When that fails, you start with personal attacks. Let me teach you about real personal attacks." Galileo Faulkner. Listen up. Stop posting selfies in your friend circle. No one will think you're some rebellious rich kid because every picture looks like a cheap nightclub gigolo on duty. And if you dare touch my fruit platter, I'll knock your head off. Galileo was speechless. I hung up before he could respond and turned off my phone. I thought Florence would be angry at me for insulting her crush, but she wasn't. She just cried. So, that's what he thinks of me? Florence sobbed. If he thought you were great, he would have been with you long ago. He's not stupid. Florence cried harder, hiccuping like a puppy. I sighed and softened my tone. Why take a dog man's words to heart? Florence suddenly wailed, startling me. I know everyone thinks that. Even my dad says I'm annoying. After she cried herself out, I spoke gently. Florence, do you know where your problem lies? She sniffled. Yes, I'm too stupid. I can't do anything right and always embarrass people around me. No, your problem is that you always blame yourself. Your dad doesn't treat you well because he's trying to please his wealthy wife. He even puts you down to do so. Why do you believe what he says? I played a video on my phone. It was from 8th grade, when Florence played the piano at a school concert. The young girl with her high ponytail was thin and straight-backed, like a swan learning to spread its wings. Under the spotlight, her eyes were focused and sparkling. Remember? After this concert, Mireille was jealous of you. The boy she liked gave you a love letter, and she sulked at home for a long time. Your dad, trying to please her, stopped your piano lessons and sold your piano. I found an old Instagram selfie of Florence. A fresh-faced girl stood at the school gate, holding a stack of books, smiling brightly with dimples. This selfie went viral. Thousands of shares, with netizens calling you an oxygen goddess. Mireille was so jealous she falsely accused you of having a secret boyfriend. Your dad cut off your allowance and threw away your makeup. I showed her a family photo her dad posted this year. Mireille shone in a new dress with a Cartier bracelet, while Florence wore sportswear, looking dull and withdrawn. Growing up in such an environment, how could Florence not lack love? Of course, she craved affection. She liked Galileo because she felt a subtle sympathy with him, sharing a sense of mutual suffering. But she had been ground down to not know how to receive love. She thought the only way to get love was to give all of hers first. Being a sycophant wasn't her intention. She just believed that precious love had to be earned through hardship. But she forgot that she deserved love just for being herself. I explained all this to her, and slowly, Florence stopped crying. I closed my eyes and saw her huddled in a dark room, her eyes swollen like 2 rotten peaches. Florence, do you still believe Galileo's assessment of you? Florence sniffled and mumbled, I guess not. I smiled, knowing this was the beginning of her transformation. Using her body to seek revenge wasn't true revenge. Changing her mindset was. After that day, Florence stopped protesting my spending. Instead, she consulted with me about what clothes and makeup suited her best. When I was lazy about going to the gym, she encouraged me not to waste the membership. Gradually, I noticed Florence regaining some control over her body. But she still lacked confidence, only saying, "You do it better than I do." I got angry. This is your body, your life. Do you think it's a game where you can hire someone to play for you? So, I enrolled her in piano lessons and made her attend. Regaining control, Florence was ecstatic. She even cried during her first lesson. The teacher praised her playing, regretting the wasted years. I was about to comfort her, but she reassured the teacher, "It's not wasted. It's never too late to start." Her thinner face glowed under the sunlight, radiating a newfound brightness. I began a social media journey, sharing daily vlogs with the theme, "A college girl with a bit of pocket money." My followers, mostly girls my age, enjoyed watching my shopping trips, classes, purchases, unboxings, and restaurant visits. Soon, I started getting sponsorship deals. My account became profitable, allowing me to travel during my free time, gather content, document my spending habits, and earn even more. Florence Tavish was thrilled and admiring as she looked at the balance. "How are you so amazing?" I replied, "People love seeing your face. Your piano skills attract followers too, and that's thanks to you. When I'm too lazy to edit videos, you do it. We brainstorm some scripts together. Why do you only praise me and not yourself?" Florence Tavish blushed. Hee hee. After a long pause, she whispered, "I guess I'm a bit amazing too." I was sipping my milk tea and laughed so hard that I nearly spat it out. The once docile heroine was becoming quite endearing. One day, Mireille Bannister suddenly called. Her tone was as haughty as ever, as if I were her servant. Florence Tavish. My birthday is next Wednesday. I've rented a villa for the celebration. My parents will be there too. You should come. In the original story, this was a pivotal moment of torment for the heroine. On the day of departure, Mireille brought an extra friend at the last minute, and there wasn't enough room in the car. Galileo Faulkner, annoyed at the delay, told the heroine to take a taxi. The heroine, always understanding, said, "It's fine, I'll take a taxi." At the villa, the heroine ran around preparing food, getting herself dirty and tired while Galileo handed the freshly grilled skewers to Mireille. Mireille laughed and pointed out the soot on the heroine's nose, mocking her. Already upset from the car ride, the heroine couldn't hold back her tears. Galileo, thinking she was embarrassing, scolded her. "Is this little thing worth crying over? So annoying." Mireille fanned the flames. "Don't act like I'm bullying you." Her stepmother, appearing fair, wiped her tears and softly said, "Florence, don't cry. It's Mireille's birthday. Cheer up so everyone can be happy, okay?" Her father, upon hearing this, got angry and scolded her for being petty and embarrassing. Galileo even threw a $100 bill at her to take a taxi back. So the heroine left, hungry and humiliated, without even a bite of cake. Recalling this scene, I told Mireille Bannister, "Sure, I'll be there." Before she could respond, I hung up the phone. Florence Tavish asked, "Are we going?" I smiled darkly. "We must go. How else will we slap her face?" I expected Florence to advise against confrontation, especially with her father there. To my surprise, Florence cheerfully said, "I'm glad. I want to learn how you scold people." I was speechless. It felt like I was witnessing the dark transformation of the novel's heroine. Terrifying indeed. On Mireille Bannister's birthday, I arrived at the dorm entrance to meet her and the others at the agreed time. Mireille's expression froze when she saw me. She looked me up and down, pursing her lips. I adjusted my newly purchased light pink coat, the soft clicks of my Mio Mio flats on the pavement. With one hand holding a new Chanel bag and the other a gift, I smiled brightly and handed the bag to her. "Happy birthday. Here, for you." Mireille accepted it awkwardly, fidgeting with her hair and checking her makeup in her phone's camera, clearly insecure. One of her senior male friends, visibly impressed, approached to ask for my contact information. Mireille clutched her phone tightly, unable to hold back her question. "Sister, where did you get the money for all this? Did you do something shady?" Before I could respond, a girl nearby exclaimed softly, "Are you Florence? I'm a fan." She came over for a photo, and I graciously obliged. Mireille asked, "Fan of what?" The girl showed her my account. "She's gotten really popular lately. Is she your sister?" "Wow, Mireille, your sister is amazing. She even has luxury brand sponsorships." Mireille's face twisted, trying to maintain a forced smile. After a while, her eyes lit up as she waved and called out, "Galileo!" She looked at me smugly, waiting for me to run to Galileo and fawn over him so she could relish in his rejection. But I didn't even glance in his direction. Biting her lip, she clung to Galileo's arm as he approached, smiling. "You're here." Galileo, flattered, nodded. Then he saw me and froze. I glanced at him, then turned away. "How do you feel now, Florence?" Florence replied. "The more I look, the more he seems like a spoiled brat. I'm already picturing his ugly face eating my fruit platter." Well, I had worried about how to break the heroine's infatuation, but it seemed unnecessary now. She was already becoming an independent woman. Galileo stared at me for a long time, so long that Mireille had to step on his foot to snap him out of it. He then pretended to be disdainful. "Florence, why are you dressed so well for Mireille's birthday? Trying to steal her spotlight." I looked puzzled. "I dress like this every day. You think I look good? I'll take that as a compliment." "Thanks." Galileo's face turned red. He handed his gift to Mireille without another word. Mireille's forced smile was more of a grimace. Of course, Galileo's low emotional intelligence made it obvious he thought I looked better than Mireille. Once everyone gathered, it was just as the story described. There was one extra person. Mireille feigned helplessness. "Sister, the car's too full. Could you take a taxi?" I pulled out my car keys and jingled them in front of her. "No problem, I'll drive." Mireille's expression froze. "You bought a car?" The girl who was my fan excitedly said, "Florence, can I ride with you?" "Of course," I said, taking her arm and heading to the parking lot. "Don't worry, I'm a steady driver." Ignoring Mireille's expression, I set the GPS and drove to the villa. Florence's father and Mireille's parents were already there, surrounded by a mountain of gifts, making Mireille smile for once. When Florence's father saw me, he was visibly surprised. "Florence, have you got a boyfriend?" I replied, "No, Dad. Why do you ask? If you don't have a boyfriend, where did you get the money for your clothes and bag?" Mireille chimed in, "Uncle, don't you know? My sister is quite something now. She makes her own money through social media." Mireille's mother, smiling as she patted Mireille's head, said pointedly, "Florence is doing well, but don't let it interfere with your studies or lead you to meet the wrong kind of people." Mireille's mother had a hand in Florence's situation. She never liked Florence and used her father to suppress her. Florence's father, eager to please his wife and Mireille, immediately turned hostile. "You're still a student. Why are you doing social media? You have plenty of time to earn money later. Stop doing improper things." His loud voice drew the attention of Mireille's friends. "Exactly what I wanted. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know earning my own money would upset you. I just envy Mireille for having so much pocket money, being able to buy whatever she wants and look so good." I bit my lip and continued, "You give me so little allowance. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have thought of making money myself. I'm sorry for worrying you." Florence's father turned red with anger. "Why compare yourself to Mireille? Have I ever let you go hungry?" "But it's not enough for food," I said, pretending to be aggrieved. "Last time I used all my allowance on a doctor's visit when I had the flu. You told me to spend sparingly, and I went hungry that month. I know I can't compare myself to Mireille. Her allowance comes from Auntie, and mine comes from you. I get it." The onlookers murmured among themselves. Someone whispered, "His belt costs over 20,000. How does he not give his daughter enough money? Yeah, that shirt isn't cheap either." Florence's father, embarrassed and angry, sputtered, "You!" But he couldn't find fault with what I said. He didn't give me money, so I earned it myself. What's the problem? Fuming, he took deep breaths. Mireille's mother gently patted his shoulder. "Calm down, dear. The children's friends are here." Florence's father, forced to regain his composure, told me, "Go and help out." He expected me to play the maid, as I did at home. No chance. "Everyone, it's time to start the barbecue. I'll wash the vegetables. Who's with me?" My fangirl was the first to volunteer, and a few other girls joined in. With everyone pitching in, Florence's father and Mireille's mother felt embarrassed just sitting around, so they helped set the table. Soon, we were eating and drinking, the atmosphere much more relaxed. Mireille, opening her gifts, finally smiled. When she opened my gift, a slightly expensive dress, she forced a satisfied nod. But as she was about to put it away, she noticed a faint trace of foundation on it, catching a whiff of perfume. Mireille was furious. "Florence, you gave me a worn dress?" Florence's father looked at me with disappointment and anger. "Florence, is this how I raised you? You earn money but can't give Mireille a new dress." I said, "What? Didn't you give me one of Mireille's worn dresses for my birthday? I thought it was normal in our family." Florence's father turned red with embarrassment. In her second year of high school, Florence received a dress for her birthday and was thrilled until Mireille casually mentioned, "This was Uncle's gift to me. I wore it a few times but didn't like it, so you can have it." Florence's father, not wanting to upset Mireille, awkwardly stood by and didn't comfort his daughter, saying only, "Take it if you like it." Florence had cried and never touched the dress again. Now the tables turned. Florence's father clenched his fists. "It's different. Today is Mireille's birthday. Isn't a birthday a birthday? Mireille has never given me a gift. I think I've done well." Florence Tavish's father, humiliated and furious, was on the verge of a heart attack. Galileo Faulkner turned to me, suddenly shouting, "Enough! Florence Tavish, are you deliberately trying to ruin Mireille's birthday?" Before I could respond, Florence's voice echoed in my mind, "Can I talk to him?" I relinquished control of the body to her, expecting her to be gentle and reasonable, given her history of being a submissive and voiceless heroine. But Florence surprised me. She began with a cutting question. "Galileo Faulkner, What do you like about Mireille Bannister? Galileo, gritting his teeth, replied, Didn't I tell you? I like Mireille because she's kind-hearted. When I was isolated and alone, she spoke up for me. She's not as scheming as you. Just leave her alone. Florence laughed coldly. Have you ever thought about who made you isolated and alone? It was Mireille Bannister. She spread rumors about your illegitimate birth while pretending to be your friend, winning over you, the brainless sycophant. The only person who truly stood by you was me, but you were too blind to see it. Galileo stood there stunned. Florence finished her orange juice, stood up, and said, I have a phobia of giant idiots. You all enjoy your meal. I'm leaving. With that, she walked away without looking back, leaving me in awe. The once meek heroine had turned into a fierce eagle. As she returned control of the body to me, she asked, How did I do? I clapped enthusiastically. A perfect score. You deserve to be proud. Naturally, Florence Tavish's father bombarded me with calls afterward. I ignored them, turning on silent mode. The thought of him fuming brought me joy. A man who used his daughter to please his wealthy wife didn't deserve my time. Florence and I collaborated on a video about the impact of family on personal growth. One perk of being a content creator is turning even the worst experiences into profitable content. The video went viral. Someone unearthed a middle school performance of Florence playing Dream Waltz, stunning the audience, and juxtaposed it with her years of absence from the piano due to her father's efforts to appease his stepdaughter. Sympathy poured in. People lamented Florence's lost potential. Her father was doxxed, and his social media was flooded with hateful comments. He called me hundreds of times, which I ignored. He texted cursing me, to which I replied, Thanks for the content, Dad. Another video coming up. That shut him up quickly. The video, with 3 ads, made me a tidy profit. 2 weeks later, Galileo Faulkner found me. He looked disheveled, grasping my wrist desperately. Florence, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He had spent the time verifying Florence's story. It was true. Mireille had bullied and manipulated him because she saw Florence's feelings for him and wanted to take him away. In the original story, Galileo realized the truth around this time. He manipulated Florence into confessing her love on his birthday to make Mireille jealous. When Florence confessed, he publicly rejected her, laughing at Mireille's reaction. Florence cut ties with him, and only then did he hear the truth, leading to a regretful pursuit. Now, seeing this pathetic man before me, I asked Florence, Do you want to handle this? Florence eagerly replied, Let me. I handed control to her, and she immediately slapped Galileo. Galileo was stunned. In his mind, Florence would have been tearful and conflicted, not aggressive. Are you out of your mind? Florence spat. What did you do wrong? Tell me. Galileo stammered. I shouldn't have. Before he could finish, she slapped him again. Forget it. Just looking at you annoys me. Galileo, a man with a romantic complex, had allowed Mireille to treat him like a pet. Now, realizing Florence's sacrifices, he accepted the blows. Florence, I'm truly sorry. Please give me another chance. Florence, with all her strength, slapped him one more time. Look at yourself. You can't even wash your own socks, fail 4 subjects each semester, and get exhausted after a mere 1,000 meters. Why would I take you back? I interjected. Hey, that's my line. Florence said. Because you're absolutely right. Galileo, wobbly but determined, pleaded. Florence, give me a chance. I'll treat you well. Florence pulled out her phone, showing him her messages. Look at this. See how many handsome guys are after me? What makes you think you stand a chance? Galileo froze, his eyes trembling. He made one last attempt. Florence, I can give you money, lots of it. Florence showed him the donation receipt for the amount she had blackmailed from him, given to girls in mountain villages. I don't need your money. I donated it all. We're done here. Stop wasting your time. Galileo seemed to finally understand. He walked away, posting a melancholy status. The girl who once saw only me is now lost to me. Florence commented, Delete it. Don't you feel embarrassed? I was speechless, amazed at Florence's transformation into a sharp-tongued star. But I also sensed something unusual. Her change seemed too decisive. Florence, do you really have no regrets? You can be honest with me. She replied. How could I turn back after everything you've done for me? I was both shocked and moved. She was still the brave, selfless heroine but now directed her loyalty towards me. My mission was complete, and I could return any time. But Florence didn't want me to leave, so I stayed for a few more months, enjoying the drama. Florence's father became infamous as a freeloading loser who used his daughter. His wealthy wife left him, taking everything. He came to Florence for help, and she suggested he sue her for alimony. Enraged, he cried on the street while Florence filmed him, creating another viral video. Mireille became infamous at school for bullying Florence. Her reputation was in tatters, and she couldn't even stay in the dorms. Galileo Faulkner was socially dead. Mentioning him evoked, "Oh, the guy who hired a sycophant and didn't pay. What a loser. Thanks for the content, loser." Despite his efforts, Florence showed no signs of reconciliation. She didn't bother speaking to him, just slapped him away. On my departure day, Florence hugged herself asking, "Will we meet again?" "I don't think so. You're no longer the voiceless heroine. You don't need me for revenge anymore." Florence embraced herself and said, "Goodbye. I wish you happiness, success, and all the best. What's your name?" "My name isn't important. Just think of me as another version of yourself." Florence's expression softened into a smile. "Goodbye, other me. I wish you happiness, success, and all the best." The end.